Well, we'll go with what we have now.
Okay.
She just texted me. She's on her way.
All right, here they come. Oh, Shantae came in as a attendee rather than a panelist.
So we won't be able to see her.
I can promote her as a panelist. Okay. Oh, and Jakia came in as a. There we go. All right, that should be everybody.
Okay, let's make sure we can get them off mute. Hey, Jakia.
There we go. I couldn't unmute myself.
We get Shantae, then we can. Shantae, then we can go. All right, we ready? Kat, you ready? All right. Welcome to a conversation with young voices of color. We're very excited to have all of our panelists, attendees, and this is being sponsored by Oklahoma Conference of Churches and also New Leader Council Oklahoma chapter. Okay, and we're fortunate to have here tonight with us the Executive Director of Reverend Shannon Fleck is here with us, as well as Kathleen Romero, our operations assistant, is here, and also Shantae Gilmore, co-director of New Leaders Council. And so I'm going to ask Shannon if she would just say a few words before we get started.
Sure. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining the Oklahoma Conference of Churches and New Leaders Council this evening as we have this conversation. I'm thrilled to get to join this amazing panel as an observer and hear from you all, hear your words and your wisdom. It's very important that we are always in the process of uplifting diverse voices and different ages and experiences, and that helps us grow and learn as individuals. And we definitely want all people in Oklahoma, whether you are a person of faith or no faith, it doesn't matter. We're all here to be community with one another. So thank you so much to Michael and Kat and Shantae for putting this together for us this evening. And that's my welcome. I'm thrilled to get to participate. Thank you.
At this moment, I don't know if she has an opportunity to share before we get started.
Did you want me to say something? I'm sorry, I didn't hear my name.
Yes, yes, yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shirley Gilmore. I hear background noise, so I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay. So I am the director of the New Leaders Council Oklahoma chapter. And so, you know, our prime objective for New Leaders Council is to train young progressives in the state of Oklahoma from all backgrounds, from entrepreneurships to small business to if they're running for office. And so the voices of young people need to be heard. And so we're glad to be seated at the table to assist in this endeavor. So thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you. And we have an esteemed panel with us here tonight. I'm going to introduce them in a minute, but I want to say, first of all, that we are here to hear from you, to hear your voices, your perspective. And we think it's so important that you have a platform to speak your truth. And in the midst of everything that is happening, I personally want to hear from you and to learn from you. And so tonight, and if you want to know more about the Oklahoma Conference of Churches, you can go to OKC. You can go to okchurches.org. If you want to know more about the New Leaders Council Oklahoma chapter, you can go to newleaderscouncil.org/Oklahoma. And so we have Leandre Lattimore with us, and we also have Jakina Smith, Sasha Pringle Shaw, and Jacada Harrison here with us. And I want to start off by simply kind of reflecting on your thoughts surrounding the death, the assassination, the murder of George Floyd. What were your thoughts? What would you like to share about that moment and how that moment continues to impact you? And let's start off with Jacada.
Hello, everyone. So glad to be a part of this conversation tonight. Again, my name is Jakia Harrison. Just a little bit about me before I answer that question for you. I am a member of the board for New Leaders Council Oklahoma chapter as the recruitment chair, and also I serve as the Congressional District 5 Director for Young Democrats of Oklahoma, and also have been in social work for about 6 years now. So kind of a little bit about me there before I answer that question about George Floyd, because there's so much emotion that comes along with that. I think my initial reaction was not again. You immediately take in the fact that this has happened again to someone by a police officer. We have another hashtag that is trending. You have more anger building. You know, I think that was kind of the initial reaction that I had. But I couldn't get myself to watch the video. It took me a week before I could actually process that video without feeling like I would receive some type of secondary trauma that I had without exposing myself. You know, I didn't want to put that much pressure on myself, but I knew I had to go out into the streets. I knew it wasn't an option for me to just let this continue. I wanted to be a part of the movement. I wanted to make sure that my voice was heard. Not necessarily sure how to make that happen immediately, but definitely wanted to make sure that I could be a part of whatever it was that was going to happen here in Oklahoma City, because it was just that important. And because we were in the middle of a pandemic, it was everywhere. You know, it hit you in the face like you couldn't ignore it. And so just wanting to be a part of all of these things and having so many emotions to overtake you, that was my experience with it, because I had to take a minute to process it, because I had to think about the names that have come before him. Unfortunately, the names that have come after him. Just, all of these things that we now have to address, because it's right there in our face yet again. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of the conversation. I look forward to hearing from everybody else and their perspective as well.
Well, let me just follow up quickly with you. You talked about process. Do you feel like you processed through it?
I think it's taken me a while to be able to do that, because I am a proponent for counseling services if you have those available to you. So that was something that I took upon myself to speak about in my counseling services, that I had to take a moment to actually reflect on what that meant, to see another person murdered, to see someone murdered by someone that is, or a group of people that are supposed to protect and serve the community, that, I had to process that I am a Black woman that has a Black father, a Black mother, a Black brother. It was something that I had to really go through the steps of understanding for myself. It could be me, it could be them. And so what do I do now so that it doesn't become them, that we are not the next hashtag? So I think that I'm still processing it now, even as we talk about this, but I'm also trying to take it day by day, because you don't want to overwhelm yourself with what it is that we go through day to day in our Black skin.
Thank you. Thank you. Leandre, same question.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leandre Lattimore. A little bit about myself. I just recently graduated from OCU here, and I'll be starting grad school in the fall to my Master's of Public Administration with a concentration in public policy. I am also the Advocacy Director for Young Democrats of Oklahoma, so thank you guys for having me. And really, to answer the same question, just to kind of piggyback off of what Jakia said, it's really the same thing, when you think about this thing happening like over and over and over again, my initial thoughts, especially just in the midst of everything that's been going on with the pandemic and everything, it's just a very tired feeling that you get. It's like, we're tired of seeing the same thing happen over and over again. And I'm only 22 years old, so I can only imagine how people older than me feel. I can imagine how my grandmother feels, who was raised in the 60s, you know what I mean? Having to see this thing happen decade after decade. And, it's two things that I kind of see happen amongst people with this thing. Is like, you either feel the emotion over and over again, or you sort of become numb to it because it happens so often. And, it's really unfortunate, because I even have conversations with like my little sister, and I've had to hear her tell me, my biggest fear is that one day I might be you, and to hear that come from an 11-year-old's mouth really does something to you, to think that it could be any of us at any day. So, the feeling of like really being frustrated and fed up, really, I think, with the system and the way things are done, and to know that, like, despite everything, it's a life that's been taken that can't be like given back and everything. So it's, despite everything that is going on, like with our protesting, like, we know this is very important and stuff. And I think we're seeing a movement that's going to really be a very big point in our history moving forward, with the amount of people that were protesting in literally all 50 of the states that we have in the country. I think that may have been the first time we've ever seen something on that large of a scale in terms of mass protesting. At least this is the first time we've been able to see it visualized with recordings and everything. So I think this is a very a trying time that we're in. And unfortunately, I think it's important that we take this moment to figure out really what we need to do in terms of concrete change moving forward.
I'm going to ask you the same question. Have you processed through it all?
I would say that I deal with it in numerous ways. I have to do a lot of meditation and really sitting there and thinking. But same with Jakia, when I first heard that it happened, it took me a very, very long time to actually watch the video because of how traumatizing it is. And then you think about the Ahmaud Arbery video, I never actually watched that one. because of how traumatic it can be to see someone get their life taken. And knowing that is something that they can't control. You know, we're all born Black. We don't get to choose to be in the skin that we're in, and to know that this could be any of us any day, and it's not much that we can do about it.
Okay. Sakana, your thoughts? Can we unmute?
Okay, yeah, I'm here. I would definitely say I felt the same emotions. It was just kind of like a somber mood. I would just go to work. I work in Edmond, so I'm the only person of color who was there, like during the times that I would work. So I don't know, I just felt a very somber mood as well. And how you kind of just touched on Ahmaud, that was like a huge thing for me. And then George Floyd to just come like straight after, it was just like, wow, like I didn't know how to process it either. The secondhand trauma is so real. And that's why I had hosted a rally. It was kind of sort of just an expression rally, because it's crazy how we aren't having this to someone that's close to us, but we all still, just get that same effect on us where we just feel just a somber mood. And it's just hard when, you're not really surrounded by that many people that can understand. Um, so yeah, I would definitely say like I'm getting emotional now because just the mood I was feeling, like I had to take a break from social media for a couple of days because it was just too much, like just story after story after story. So I would just say that it's just overwhelming. Like,
And so you're still processing.
yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you. Seisha, I'm going to turn to you now.
Yeah. So when I first found out about it, I had the same type of reaction to it. Like, again, like this is happening again. Like I haven't watched the video to this day. I refuse to, because I've seen so much trauma on social media of our people. Like I just couldn't bring myself to watch it. It was very traumatizing. I've watched several other videos, and I'm just tired of watching our people gunned down like animals. And so the way I was able to cope with it was by trying to be there for my friends, the ones that were protesting. I tried to go to some of those, and if I wasn't able to, I tried to provide support in terms of like money or, resources, things of that nature, just getting the word out. Because the first death I dealt with of that magnitude was Trayvon Martin. That was the reason why I got heavily involved in the NAACP Youth and College group at UCO. When that happened, that was very traumatic for me because I do have a Black father, I have a Black brother, Black nephew that I adore, that I help raise. And I said, that could have been him walking down the street. Josiah walks up and down the street every day, like to get exercise. And that could have been him with some bigot coming behind him, asking him, what are you doing, walking? Like, why are you walking this street? And so, it freaked me out. But, with the George Floyd protests, I think that, as somebody who is a big supporter of social justice movements, I think that it did open the floodgates for many others, with the statue removals, with people wanting to decolonize education, and just the reopening of other cases of Black and brown people who have been murdered by law enforcement, and in general, by like other, like other bigots, in other states. So I think it's been been bittersweet, but I won't bring myself to watch the video, but I will, do whatever I can to help friends of mine who are out there on the front lines, because I know what that's like. I was once upon a time. I tell myself, I gotten a bit old for it, like body wise, like I feel like I'm like 72, but you know, just like, hey, you young folks can do it. But you looking at me, Mike, like,
yeah.
but I know I'm still young, but you know, I just want to help others, you know, in whatever they're doing. But as far as like the way I'm coping with it, that is how I'm coping with it. You know, one quote that I won't get right, but I'm a paraphrase by one of my heroes, Julian Bond. He talks about social justice and how, you know, you can do service, social service, but in order, basically, like you can do social service, but in order for us to get to the point of social justice, you won't need social service anymore. Basically, like, don't be performative, you know, do the work, understand why you're doing the work, you know, because I mean, you could be out here all day holding signs like, but what are you going to do when you go home? Are you going to tell friends of yours and family members who are white, who might happen to be white or non-black, you know, that this is happening to our black and brown brothers and sisters? Or are you just going to like attend a rally and that's all you're going to ever do? You know, you need to spread the word. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. And one note, we will be taking your questions at the end after we're done with the panel. They will be addressing your questions, so please continue to type those in. You know, it's I think one main point out of all the things that you talked about is the trauma I think that Black people are experiencing, especially the imagery of the loss of Black life and how we're kind of, you know, there is no sort of laid out blueprint for how we process through this, right? And so I hear everything that you're saying, and I want to make it personal, because we looked at what is happening around our country with other Black individuals, but I want to make it personal. And Jakeda, if we can start with you, and if you can talk about Jakia, if you can talk about your experiences. Have you had experience where you've been racially profiled? Have you had experience with police officers, and how was that, and how do you continue to live day to day with that sort of threat?
All right, so I think I have been blessed to not have personally experienced anything with police officers, but definitely racism within Oklahoma. The first time that I actually experienced this, I was about 8 years old. I remember going to my aunt's sewing shop. She owned a shop in downtown Oklahoma City, and she had only been open for maybe a week, and I wanted to go with her to work. And so there was a business that was open next door where she had some issues with them, and they were not wanting her to allow her customers or her to park in the front parking area where she had, I mean, it's her business too, so this is allocated parking for the two businesses. They came out at night while she was still there and while we were getting ready to leave. And they came out and they told her to never park there again, and pushed her down and called her the N-word and called her all types of things outside of her name. They called me a little N-word baby. And so I remember these things, and you would be surprised what you'll remember and what you suppress when you're trying to deal with all of these things. But when you see racism happen, then and it's spotlighted and it's brought to your attention, things start to come back up. And so I never really thought about that again until my mom asked me what was my first experience with racism. And then it flooded back, and I had to think like, wow, that was an actual experience for me. I had no idea what to do at 8 years old against grown white men, trying to overpower my aunt and trying to put fear into an 8-year-old girl. So at that point, all I knew was to call the people who could protect me. So I called my mom, I called my grandfather, I called my uncle. These are, the people that I know to protect me. Never in my mind to think to call 911. I called the people that I knew that actually had been there for me to actually protect me as a child. So that experience in itself has kind of shaped my experiences with white people in Oklahoma, white people in America, because I haven't lived in Oklahoma my entire life now. For 6 years, I lived in Tennessee, which was an experience on its own, because there I had an experience with the Klan, and I had never had that experience here. And so, it's when you're faced with those things. And I'm 30, so by the time I'm 21, I've had all of these experiences with white people in America and not knowing how to really deal with those things. So again, like you said, trauma comes up and you have to deal with those things and process it, because you're Black in America. I can't change my skin color. I can't change any of those things, but those are now life experiences that I have to live with.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Sakina, your thoughts?
My first racial experience was actually after I attended the Trayvon Martin rally in 2012 that we had downtown in Oklahoma City. My cousin and I and my mom, we begged my mom to go, my cousin and I. And so she took us, and we ended up getting a picture posted on Fox 25. And my cousin had held a sign and it said, Trayvon could have been me. And they were just calling him the trailer trash N-word, calling us all N-words, saying that they will find us and kill us, and just things like that. We had to beg the news to take it down off of Facebook. So I would say that was very eye-opening for me, because I do live in Dale City and we're pretty diverse. So I never just had to just deal with things like that. My best friend was white at the time, so just having her, like, we're 12 years old on Facebook trying to defend ourselves, or my family just coming to, our rescue and stuff. And I would just say that was my first time that it just happened to me. And ever since then, like, I just looked at my surroundings differently, and it just changed my approach to when I am dealing with people of the opposite color, because it's like, to live somewhere and then it's like these people who think of, people your color are so closely. It was honestly scary for me at 12 years old. Like, I was just scared, like, they could be in my backyard, So that was my first time having a racial encounter, was through social media, I would say, when Fox 25 posted our pictures.
Mm. So to kind of follow up on that, how do you live with that new reality of life day to day?
I would say that's when I kind of just started, I would say, being pro-Black. Like, I just started trying to learn more about being Black. That's honestly when I realized I really wanted to be a lawyer too, after watching the Trayvon Martin case. So I would say, like, day to day, it just helped me wanting to become more of an advocate through political things. So I would say that's how I kind of live with it day to day, just trying to be a voice for my community and just find other ways to do that through advocating and not just activism.
Yeah, it kind of drives you to learn about you, right? Your history. Leandre?
To answer that question, I would pretty much say the same for me. Really, do you want me to talk about the racial experiences too, or just the
racial experiences too?
I don't know if I would necessarily say I can remember as early back as when I was a child, maybe to a traumatic racial experience. To be honest, I grew up on the East Side, so I wouldn't say I really interacted with white people enough to really experience that up until I really got to around high school and college, especially when I got to college. mainly I remember too, they both talked about pretty traumatic experiences, but I want to touch on another part of that too, which is like microaggressions and everything. I can remember so many microaggressions that I experienced even back to when I was little, being told that, oh, you speak so well to be a black person, or even being told that I talk white, because I can articulate my words well. Or when I first got to OCU, I remember people would immediately ask me what sport I played. And for those who don't know, I was an art major at OCU. You know, I played sports in high school, but to just assume that I'm an athlete because of my stature maybe, or because I'm a black person, those type of microaggressions happen very often. And you know, I think when I realized the severity of racism and oppression in this world, I would say that it kind of radicalized me in so many different ways, especially in terms of being like pro-black. It taught me more to learn about black activists and things that have been done in the past in terms of activism, and to just really learn the history of racism. And it was the first time that I also realized that a lot of the things that we were taught like in school and throughout history are very, very much historically inaccurate, for the sole purpose of vilifying black people in so many different ways. So I think that, you know, a lot of things that have happened have allowed for me to realize like how serious it is, and to want to get more involved. To understand that we all have to play a part, I think, if we're going to overcome our oppression, and we all have to find our niche and our role in the puzzle piece, I think. So that's really the experience for me.
Okay, Seisha.
Hey. Yeah, I can hear you. So like Leandre, I also grew up in Northeast Oklahoma City, in the Garden Oaks community. So graduated from Douglas. So I really wasn't around a lot of white people like that in my life. But I will say that so at the school I went to, FD Moon Academy, which was it was known as FD Moon Academy back when I was in middle school. I did have this orchestra teacher who was a student teacher who did not think that we were capable of playing grade level music. I was a violinist from 8 to about 24 years old. And I had played the violin, and he didn't think that we were capable. And I said, well, why won't you let us try? And he said, well, I just don't think you guys can read music on grade level. Like, we have these fifth grade orchestra sheets you can play off of. So I said, no. So what I did, I got in trouble for it, but I took out the music anyway. And like, I was like distributing it, and that was like a whole ordeal. I got ISS for 3 days, but it was worth it because, this white man who was talking to these black kids in middle school, and some of my classmates will probably remember this, and he was telling us that you guys can read sheet music, like all of you play a string instrument, but you're not capable of playing music on grade level. And when we asked him why, he couldn't tell us why. And so back then I straight up said, well, it's because we're black, isn't it? Like, you wouldn't do this at Classen. You wouldn't do this at an Edmond school. You wouldn't do this at PC North. Like but you did it here, So I would say that was probably like my first instance of racism that I can like fully remember that I actually spoke up about. But then also when I went to OCU, like Leandre, I graduated with my bachelor's in history and political science. When I went there, my freshman year, like, it was so many microaggressions I had to deal with, not only from other students, but also from other teachers. Anytime we talked about anything that was related to Black folks, and also Indigenous people, because I'm also Indigenous, like, they would look at me or like other Black and brown people in the room. And I'm just like, well, I'm not the ambassador of all Black people. I don't know why you're looking at me, like. And one time we were in the CAF, and somebody was playing some rap song or whatever. And one of the young white students was like, oh, I bet you know about this. I said, actually, no, like, I'm really more in the Roy Ayers now and Common. Like, I really don't know who that is. And then they're like, oh, well, I thought you would know. Why? Because I'm Black? Like, no, I don't listen to that. I like hip hop. Like, what that is, I don't know what that is. But like, that's not what I listen to. So I dealt with that as well. And it's just, you know, and then the social media instances, like with Sakina, like, I remember, and this was OCU related, where they had the blackface incident. And I don't know if Leandre was at OCU at the time when this happened. It was a sorority party, and you know, it was a Beyonce Jay-Z thing. And so basically, like, this girl was in blackface as Jay-Z. And so I went ahead and did an interview at Ralph Ellison Library. And this was back, Mike, when you were the director, you know, and like they were, you know, I did the interview, and then online, this white supremacist group took my interview and put it on the forum. And they were calling me all kinds of names. I'm not going to repeat it because they were like terrible. It's still online. And the way I was able to find it is because one day, you know, I Googled the article and I said, you know, I'm trying to find this article to share with people. And then I saw it on this forum. And I'm telling you, like, I had never been so afraid in my life, you know, because I said, these people know my name. Like, what if they look me up? Like, what if they dox me? Because I've been doxed before because of my activism at protests, you know, with the pipeline protests, you know, back in 2015 through 2016. So I said, oh my God, you know, so, you know, immediately I went online and I found those websites where they do have your address, and I started removing my information. But yeah, like I said, this stuff is real. Like, and these folks will try to intimidate you as much as possible. And, you know, for about a month or so, like, I did take a step back, you know, and I said, okay, well, let me let me chill out for a bit, because this is scary. You know, I called a friend of mine who was a cop at the time, and, you know, he told me, well, he said, I mean, they're not actively threatening you like with bodily harm, but I mean, just keep a lookout. And I'm like, man, I don't know who these people are. Like, these are like random white supremacists and neo-Nazis who can find out where I live. You know, I mean, now granted, they probably not gonna come to the east side because they're not that crazy. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, somebody could be, you know, and so those are just some instances of what I've dealt with. I mean, and there are many more, but those are like probably the top three that have been more unsettling to me.
You know, I hear one experience of being Black in America is this idea of living in such vulnerable state. We've talked about the trauma. Let's talk about the fear. Let's talk about that vulnerability of every day, just wanting to make it home. I think a lot of people don't understand that experience from the time you wake up, you Black, time you go to bed, you Black, and in between, when you're driving out here, you're looking over your shoulder. When you're in the store, you're looking over your shoulder. Talk about how do you manage that fear? Takia, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so I think for me, most recently, beforehand, I had always been cautious of like being pulled over by police officers. Always made sure I was in a well-lit area, made sure that it was somebody else that was gonna be able to tell a story if necessary. But I find myself more often now checking the rearview mirror when I'm driving, because I wanna alleviate whatever I can possibly to stop that interaction prior to it even becoming a possibility. I drive through the I-235 construction pretty much every day, and I literally gasp before I drive through because I know that there's gonna be a police officer there on one side when you go through the first part of construction. There's gonna be one on the other side once you get to the end of it. And so I'm like holding my breath, just trying to get to where I need to go within this little 2-mile area, just to be able to make sure that, I didn't do anything that could even make them think that they want to pull me over. So that's one thing, that I have done purposely. But also just, I think because I've been at like protests, I was at the protest that Sakina had organized, and I mean, it has become a daily thing to be able to make sure I know my surroundings. I know a way in, I know a way out. I know how many officers are there. I know how many white people are in the room. I know I I have looked at what they're wearing to make sure I can possibly, if I can, tell if they're an ally of mine or if there's somebody I should be wary of when I'm walking around. You know, those are the types of things that I've had to do personally to be able to make sure that I'm just checking myself in the area. And it's really sad to say that it's become a self-preservation type of thing, not necessarily even, you know, trying to account for anybody else's actions, but what can my actions do to stop their reaction? And it's sad because now I'm thinking 6 steps, or 10 steps, or 15 steps ahead, and I'm just trying to live day to day as if, you know, in the moment. You're missing everything that's going on around you because you're worried about what steps you should be taking just in case. So I think that that's personally what I've done. And I also do it with my friends because I've been to a lot of protests with my friends. I like to hang out with my friends at restaurants and things, but now I'm conscious of like where I'm sitting. Am I sitting somewhere where I can be able to scan the whole room? You know, it's just those types of things that you just don't necessarily think that you should do every day. I should be able to walk into a restaurant and sit down and have a good time with my friends and not worry about the person that walks in the door. Are they going to recognize the fact that this person's been all over the newspaper and they're going to say something off the wall to them today? That shouldn't be my everyday situation, but that's kind of what it's become. So, you know, just trying to make sure that I take that on myself, but also take the pressure off myself as well. You know, that I shouldn't have to live like that.
Yeah, Sakina, I want you to talk about that. But as you unmute yourself, I want to, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work day to day. And I think so many of us have to do that work each and every day. So, Sakina, would you talk to?
I would say like just the fear being a factor is so true because like every time that I attend a protest or just think about speaking or like just the other day I had a news ask me to do a private interview and I was like honestly second guessing just to have your face like broadcasted like that and what you're saying. Like it's people out there who will really try to harm you. And so I just agree with her about just scanning the room and stuff. I found myself doing that. And a good thing about some of my friends that I be with at protests, they're scanning the room as well. So if someone does look suspicious, we kind of just give each other like that heads up, like just watch what you're saying or like, like be careful of what you're doing around them because they do kind of look suspicious. And it's sad that we have to just have that type of mentality. And I would just also say like, I found myself, I don't even know the word, but just as I'm just driving down the street in Edmond, I just find myself kind of angry when I see like people jogging or, just looking just happy. Like that sounds bad, but just seeing like white people just look too comfortable and being able to jog and stuff, it kind of just make me angry because we have had people just die when they were jogging or, just going to the store to get snacks. And it kind of just creates this anger inside of me like we have to live in fear every day and just think of every constant move we make in certain areas and stuff. So it just kind of honestly began to just produce anger in me. So that's something that I've been working on as well.
Wow, that's deep, but so true. It's our reality, and I just, I'm right there with you, and I think this conversation is so powerful, so rich, that people need to hear. Leandre, would you talk about that as well?
Yeah, definitely. Especially talking about getting pulled over by the police. As a black man, this happened to me a couple of times, and unfortunately, as much as you want to be cool in situations like that. When it happens, my heart immediately drops, and it's nothing. It could be nothing wrong. Just when it happens, just the images and the memories of everyone who has died at the hands of being pulled over, and people who have done everything right in terms of complying, when that's always the rebuttal, and it's like it still wasn't enough. Obviously those things run through my mind when I think about it. And even just to the note of just individual citizens and races, people just in general, being very threatening and aggressive towards Black people. It wasn't here until recently that I think that I was more so for like the Second Amendment up until now. I think growing up maybe in high school, especially thinking about gun violence and everything, it's just, I was very much against owning guns. But I think now it's something that I've definitely like changed my perspective on when it starts to become more of a reality for you, understanding that like the necessity like to protect yourself, especially to Black women as well. I tell all my friends that are Black women, especially my family members, especially, is I feel like it's necessary. And unfortunately, in a perfect world, I would like for none of us to have to own guns and to be trained how to shoot them and everything. But with this world that we live in is far from perfect. So unfortunately, I tell them all the times, I would rather it be them than you that has to go, especially if it's something that they're taking upon themselves to be aggressive towards, and especially if it's from racism. So the fear that a lot of Black people have to endure is very real. And unfortunately, I think it's important that we remind ourselves that being Black isn't a burden. And, we have to remember our history of like how great our people are and how great it is to be a Black person and all the things that we've accomplished as a race of people. And to understand that, despite everything that goes on, that we should still be proud to be in the skin that we're in, but at the same time, it's necessary that we protect ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Black is beautiful. Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud. That's James Brown. Say, you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So, I'll just be quite honest. From where I grew up, I have always been afraid of law enforcement because the only time they were really in the community was to harass somebody, not really when we needed them. And that's just from my own experience. I'm not speaking for everybody else, but I will say other peers of mine have felt the same way. Here recently, well, in the last, probably say about 5 years, I had a whole new fear that was very real. And that fear was of not only being pulled over or beaten, but sexually assaulted by a cop. Here in Oklahoma City, actually not too far from where I grew up, probably about a mile away, Daniel Holtzclaw raped 12 Black women and one young Black girl. And he got away with it for a very long time until the last one, who didn't have a record, who wasn't afraid to speak out and got away, turned him in. So that was a very real fear of mine. And, now, before then, I would drive around nervous because I'm afraid I'm gonna be pulled over. But at that moment, I said, something much more sinister could happen to me, especially as a Black woman, because it's not just Black men being beaten. Like at that moment, black women were being assaulted. When Sandra Bland, was beaten and she passed away in prison, like I was like, that could have been me. She and I were very similar. She was only a year older than me, college graduate, in a Black sorority. Like it was just very scary. So it's just, trying to like convey that point to younger people, especially younger Black women, of how we need to like protect ourselves, find a way. Like Leandre said, I'm the same way. I'm not really a huge gun advocate, but at this moment, like, it's like, what other avenues do you have other than to, get trained, in shooting and, actually owning a gun? Like I've never wanted to own a gun, but now it's like, it's kind of a necessity, and on top of that, like, being able to learn how to fight, because my dad is a fighter, but it's like, I never thought in my life that I'm gonna have to know Taekwondo and like all this. I have to be Bruce Lee to deal with these people, not just like, I'm not saying I'll fight law enforcement, but I'm just saying like people that would attack you, like because you're black. Like, that's scary. And it's like, I shouldn't have to feel that way, but especially as a young black woman who's single, you know, who's by herself a lot, like, you know, especially at night. Like, I mean, it's just something we definitely have to think about now, especially after what happened, you know, with Daniel Holtzclaw, because I actually, you know, helped organize some of those protests with OKC Artists for Justice. And so, you know, it was very telling at the amount of like animosity that people who were supporting Daniel Holtzclaw had for those women, because they were like, you know, well, they shouldn't have been out at night. They shouldn't have talked back. So they should have been assaulted because of that. You know, like, it was just, it was mind blowing. But I mean, like I said, it opened my eyes, because I said, you know, this is a whole nother level of intimidation, especially for black women, you know, and of course black men as well, you know, like, and like Leandre said, also, I want to touch on this, like, even when you do everything right, you know, when you're pulled over, you do everything right. We saw in the case of Philando Castile, sometimes that's not enough. Like, he told the cop that he had a concealed carry permit, and he was still shot and killed on camera. So, you know, it's just really unsettling for me. But those are my thoughts on that.
The vulnerability, the trauma, the fear is real. And it's, you know, me being a, you know, I use this word, and a lot of people say that, you know, it's out of fashion, but me being an older cat, and listening to, you know, my young brothers and sisters, it's disheartening to hear the same that was in me at your age. I would have hoped that had changed, but the reality is it's much deeper for you than it is for me, because of social media and how you are exposed and connected in today's world. You know, we have this growing number of allies. You see it in the protests, and this is a question that has come forward that's connected to one of our original questions, and any one of the panelists can take a stab at this, but and all of you can. What advice would you give to our allies? What can they do to support us during this time? Support you during this time? And anyone can jump and take that one. Anyone? Okay, go ahead.
I would definitely say a first step is just to educate yourself and just show up and try to, you know, just understand and stuff and be that voice around those people who, you know, like may not believe in the Black Lives Matter movement. It's just about having those uncomfortable conversations with your peers and try to help open their eyes too, because racism is not born, it is taught. So just having those conversations and educating your peers, I feel like that is a good step after you educate yourself. Just that way you are, you know, bringing more people into the light instead of just continuing the darkness. I would say that would be a great first step.
Well, I want to stay right. Okay, I want to stay right there with you. Talk about how they educate themselves. What does that look like?
Okay. I can give an example. I went to a race talk at OU, and it was about their blackface incident. And it was like a good divide of people of color and white people. The question was asked, who actually knows what blackface is? And none of them like rose their hand. And it was just like excuses of, I'm a single mom, I work every day, I don't know what blackface is. And I'm just like, you know, like that's not an excuse when you have things like Google and stuff. So that's what I mean by like just educating yourself. Like, don't really show up without not knowing anything. well, it will be people there to help, but I just feel like at least take that, the initiative to try to educate yourself and have some type of background before you show up just ready to help. Because then it's kind of like, like you don't know what blackface is, but you're at the meeting saying that you're here to advocate hard. So I just believe in trying to educate yourself a little bit before you come and try to be on the front line to help. That way it's not just like, kind of weird. Like, I don't know. I just found that weird to me that they didn't even know what they were really there for.
How can you help a people that you don't know?
Mm.
You don't know their history. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know what their challenges. Allies have to understand look, you have to get educated. You gotta read, you gotta go through the books, you gotta go through history, it's work. And I like how you said that. I think Leandre, you wanted to talk to that point too about what allies can do.
Yeah, because I get asked this question all the time. And for one, first things first, I would say don't half step on it, honestly, because I think it's so important to have allies that are fully dedicated to the cause, and to understand that when you're doing activism for a group of people that you're not necessarily a part of, you have to understand that the oppression that they're dealing with it's a hat that they don't get to take off. You know what I mean? And when you're out here fighting and advocating for people, and it's a hat that you can take off, it's a certain type of privilege, or it's a certain type of way you can go about it where you're not as involved as you could be or as you need to be. Saying Black Lives Matter on social media isn't enough. Wearing a shirt that says Black Lives Matter isn't enough. Going to a protest is very effective, but at the same time, it isn't enough. So I think that it's important that we understand that you have to go full force. Like you said, educating yourself about how you can get more involved, educating yourself about the things that are actually affecting us in terms of the systemic oppression that we're facing, the different things that you're involved in. Educate yourself about how people may be disadvantaged and just the things that you have passion in, whatever career field you're going into. It's so many different avenues to understand the importance of trying to fully advocate for people. So that would be my advice. Definitely big on the educating yourself as well. I think there's so many books that we can read with different scholars have so many unique things to say about racism in America. We think about James Baldwin, Angela Davis, Bell Hooks. The list can go on with so many different authors and activists. Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X. I can speak forever on those, but I think that just a quick Google search can go a long way. And I think if you're really reading and you're really down like to educate yourself, it'll probably be more than just a quick Google search. It'll take much longer. So
we have a comment here from Lisa Foster that says, "My heart goes out to all of the panelists. The strength they have to display at such a young age is amazing. Hearing their stories is powerful. How can anyone call themselves a Christian and not feel the pain of Black people? We white people need to listen, learn, and believe these stories are real and still continue to plague Black people. My hope lies in the hands, hearts, and minds of these brilliant young men and women." And comment Seisha for governor. I don't know, Seisha, if you're going to take that up, but you know. And Matthew Ruiz says, "We are seeing so many Black people and other people of color run for office to make positive change, but politics is not everyone's calling. What other ways can people make change outside of the political realm?" Someone wants to address that? Says.
Yeah, I can. As much as, I would be blue in the face, I would go blue in the face to encourage so many of these great people, including all of our panelists, to run for office someday. I do know it's not everybody's cup of tea, it's not everybody's forte, but one thing they can do that is still political, but it's also advocacy based, is actually talking to your legislators and encouraging them to push for your issues, to advocate on behalf of your communities. That is very effective. That was one thing I did before I got as deeply involved as I am in the political realm. And then also just, like staying engaged and actually, connecting with organizations or creating one of your own that pertains to that advocacy. So, I mean, you can still be involved politically, but not like, I mean, you don't have to always run for office, but I mean, you can still be that advocate. You know, I mean, I know of plenty of folks that will never run for office, but they're always talking to their legislators. They're always talking to their city council members. They're always writing letters to the governor, trying to get meetings with them. I don't know about this one that we have here, but I know in other states it's been very successful. So, yeah, that's just my 2 cents on that, because I am president of Young Democrats of Oklahoma, and there are a lot of young people that have been coming to us, to myself and my board, to ask, you know, what can I do to get involved? I don't necessarily want to like run for office or do anything like that, but I do want to let the people who represent me know that we need to be doing something more. And then also, you know, they want to support people, their friends that are going to run for office, you know, that want to run for office, or they want them to run for office. And so I encourage that as well. But I mean, those are some key things people can do. I mean, the legislators are not here just to sit there, collect a paycheck, and not do anything. Like, no, we have to push them. And, you know, if you don't feel like they're doing what they need to do, and you've tried to push them, then, you know, I mean, primaries exist for a reason. You know, like, I mean, you know, you can get them voted out, or, you know, if they're on the other side of your political affiliation, you know, there's a way to get them out, and that's by voting. Voting is so powerful. And I know not everyone's registered to vote. I know some people don't think voting means anything, but folks have won elections literally by 3 votes. Where you're from, Mike, there was a guy who won by 1 vote in Milwaukee. I mean, he's a state rep. I mean, it's very powerful. So
We have another question here. Do you think it's fair that Jim Crow still exists in Oklahoma, and that most Oklahomans don't realize that, going back to Oklahoma's Senate Bill number 1? So the question is about Jim Crow, the existence of that. How fair do you feel that is, in the lack of knowledge of so many Oklahomans? Anyone? Yes, go ahead, Chiquita.
There we go. It's unmuted now. There are so many laws that are still on the books here in Oklahoma that disenfranchise Black, brown, indigenous. I mean, it goes across the board of just how much people don't pay attention to when it comes to what's on the books, and what people can go and find to be able to actually oppress Black people. And you'll be surprised what comes up when it is time to arrest and or charge a person that is Black or brown in Oklahoma. I think we're dealing with that now, as far as David Prater and him charging Black and brown teenagers and young people with terrorism right now in Oklahoma County for the protests that were in May, which it took him months to come up with these charges. It's things like that we tend to, that I'll say that they tend to, DAs, you know, just people in power, white people in power, that they will go and find to be able to say, oh no, you can't do that. And I took offense to what he said. He pretty much said, you're not going to cause upheaval in my county, in my state. You're not gonna do that here. You're not gonna be another Portland. And the goal was not to be another Portland. The goal was to be Oklahoma City, and to show up and have our voices heard, and to be able to exercise our First Amendment rights. And so for him to try and to oppress that voice, I definitely take offense to that. And I I sincerely feel for those young people, because fortunately, and I have been at almost every protest that there has been, and fortunately, I'm not one of those people. Fortunately, some of my friends are not those people, but we've been able to experience this with those young people that are now being charged with something that could change their lives forever. And so, speaking about Jim Crow laws, I mean, you're talking about things that have been on the books, that I can't even sundown towns. I mean, and let's be very clear that I know exactly where I do not belong in Oklahoma at certain times of night. I worked for the state for a good amount of time, and I had to drive across the state, and I knew better than to be in certain parts of Oklahoma at certain times. And if I needed to gas up before I got to that area, because if I didn't, there could be so many things that happened to me there. And it's just, I'm thinking of those towns right now as I'm sitting here like that. There's no reason why I should be, trying to think, okay, well, I don't belong here. I belong everywhere. My skin can't change. I can't do anything about that. And I also would like to say that I think that it's sad that a lot of people do not have a clear understanding of what has happened in the past, younger people, because now there's clearly, I'm a millennial, so now I have Gen Z after me and a whole nother generation after that is now here, and and representing, and learning. And so within that, they have to know the history of these things as well to be able to move forward and carry the torch. And that's not something that I think they're being taught at this point. It's not happening in the school system, so they don't know that they have to fight those things. It's sad to see what's happening at this point, and that we still have to go back and address Jim Crow laws, that we still have laws that were on the books from slavery. There are a lot of things that are still out there that most wouldn't know about.
I mean, one of the most powerful things you just said was in closing, the very fact that we have to go back and address Jim Crow. I mean, isn't that amazing? We're in the 21st century and we're still dealing with Jim Crow, black codes, the new convict leasing and mass incarceration. We're still dealing with these things today. And I mean, it's, yeah, why are we still dealing with this today? And there's I guess a gentleman, Rick Dunham, that is running for our office. He has a question for the panel, and I don't know if you can answer it, but I will ask it. He says, as a white candidate running to represent a non-diverse district, what is the best way I can amplify your voices? That's the first question. The second one is, what are the best practices in sharing your message with voters in areas that don't identify with the issues facing your community? So he's running for a office that basically ain't got black folks in it. And so he wants to amplify the black voice. And he also wants to educate them on issues in the black community. So what advice would you give? I could be a teacher and call on you now, but I'm letting you be independent. Go ahead, Leandra.
I would say that the advice I would give, for one, is to understand that you would never be able to make a group of people who don't experience a certain thing actually feel it to the fullest extent that an oppressed group would feel. So in this instance, the people in your district that are not black will never be able to fully understand what it feels like. But at the same time, I think that it is a way that you can create not necessarily empathy, but sympathy. And when I say sympathy, I don't mean in the sense of feeling sorry for us, but I mean in the sense of understanding that the issues that we face are very real for once. And I want them to understand that it's so many different things to put themselves in our shoes, to put themselves in our shoes and understand that what we're dealing with is a very serious issue. And I think to help educate them is to tell them the truth about policies and the different things that are affecting Black people disproportionately in our country, and to understand that you're gonna have to make people uncomfortable. Sometimes it may even make you uncomfortable yourself to address issues like that. But I would say that when we have to go through these issues, we are not comfortable in those situations. So why should you feel comfortable when learning about these things? And to understand that you feeling uncomfortable is okay, because it's a learning situation. So for you to learn something, I think you're gonna have to open your eyes to many different scenarios and things that you haven't experienced yourself. And I think that's important to understand, that although they may not have experienced it themselves, to put themselves in another person's shoes, to realize that is an experience that someone else has to deal with and how serious it is. And that is a more than just a race issue, it's a people issue. Martin Luther King said, injustice somewhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I think that is a very serious thing to deal with. And that would be my advice to you.
Sakina, any thoughts on that?
I would just go along with him of just educating them of the policies that does affect Black people. Since there's none in that area, they wouldn't know like firsthand, or I guess, yeah, firsthand experience from their peers or just people around them. So I would also educate them on policies that may exist in that area that may be stopping Black people from being in that area. So I would just educate them on that as well. I think that'd be a good first step, is trying to just create awareness.
So I want to talk a little what is next for you? What are you doing? What are you working on right now that you could get people involved, or just really where's your heart taking you in the midst of everything that's going on? And anyone can lead off with that.
What I am working on right now is to create a group of young people who want to not only be activists but advocates. I want to just try to like get a group of people together, and we actually make plans on how to change certain things in our system, whether that is education or just the criminal justice system. Like actually coming up with plans and things to change, whether that is, posing a bill or, a question, just things like that. Like I want to be hands on. The group, we have decided the name, and it's called The End, because we want to just put an end to a lot of things in our community. So will be more information about that soon. We are still just getting everything together, but we will be looking for young people to be a part of that. So that's kind of where I am with my next steps.
And then this is a diverse.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you said?
Is this a diverse group?
Yes, we're looking for a diverse group. You don't have to be African American, but we obviously do want people in our community.
And give out some type of contact if they want to, somebody's listening now wants to reach out to you.
We have a Facebook page up. A Facebook page up, but I can type in my email and my number, probably just my email, to be honest, for you to contact me in person.
Okay, so someone else speak that with your phone.
I've been working on a couple of things as far as with other organizations. Spoke a little bit about New Leaders Council. So that is a progressive organization, a national progressive organization, and Oklahoma does have a chapter. I am a part of was a part of the 2020 cohort. And so I just got done, so I'm eager and ready to learn more and to bring more progressive values to Oklahoma. I also encourage other people that have progressive values, and if they're not sure what progressive values are, to definitely do some research about that, because a lot of people have more progressive thoughts than they actually think that they don't. Like you're probably more on the progressive side. If you think that Black Lives Matter, that's a progressive issue. So let's be very clear about that. Like those are things that if you think people should have health care, which is a part of the systematic oppression that we deal with every day, then yes, and you believe in a progressive issue. If you believe that everybody should have an equal, equitable, let's be clear, not just equal, but equitable education, then you believe in progressive values. And so those things are taught within New Leaders Council. And so I always push for people to become part of organizations like that. So right now, New Leaders Council is accepting applications until September 3rd. So if you're interested in being a part of that, that is something that I would push for young people to be a part of. As well as Young Democrats of Oklahoma have been doing some voter registration. I am big on people voting. This is one of the most important election cycles that we will see for in this lifetime, and I think a lot of older people would say in their lifetimes. And so, you know, I definitely am wanting to help as much as possible to get people registered when it comes time to get people to the polls, to make sure that they're exercising their rights to vote, because if we want to see some actual change in some of these issues that we've talked about today, as far as racism and as far as how that affects us on a day-to-day basis, and systematic oppression and DAs and you know, the sheriff, county sheriff, all of these things can be changed within voting. And so I push for people to be able to get out and exercise that right and have a clear understanding that it is important to do so.
Thank you. Leandre?
Well, I would say that the biggest thing that I have coming right now is me going to grad school for public administration. I would say I say that my activism and my want for change is a lot of the reason of why I'm deciding to go to grad school, especially as a non-traditional major. I graduated from undergrad with my degree in art, so it's really not related at all. But just through me educating myself through undergrad years has led me to want to get more involved. And I'm in sort of a transitional period because I just graduated, so a lot of my activism and stuff was primarily on the college campus, but I'm also involved with the Young Democrats of Oklahoma as well, especially with the voter registration. I was with Jakia maybe a week or two ago, where we were actually at Ebenezer Baptist Church on Kelly doing voter registration. So I think that that's also very important too, to understand how important it is to be registered to vote and to exercise that right. And, you know, I always tell people it's not necessarily about being super involved when it comes to things like politics, but just be aware enough to understand the decisions that people are making on your daily lives, like every day, you know, and it doesn't make sense for us to not know about these things. You know, you can't make that make sense in my head for someone to be making decisions on your lives and voting and doing things that are affecting you like drastically. I'm talking about from a national level to a state level to a county level to a local city level. It's all important. And I would like to stress that a lot, to be just aware. You don't have to be as involved as you think, but to just be aware. I think that's a very important thing to add.
Sasha?
Okay. Finally got myself unmuted smoothly. As Jakia had mentioned as well as Leandre, a good organization to be a part of is organizations like NLC, Young Democrats of Oklahoma, of course, I got to put that plug in, as well as a bigger organization I'm a part of, which is Young Democrats of America. We actually have a really great group there, a lot of progressive young people who are very politically involved. I'm a part of two of the most powerful caucuses that exist. one of them being the Black Caucus of Young Democrats of America, and then I'm also chair of the Native Caucus of Young Democrats of America. So we've been doing a lot of great things on that end. But one thing that I always tell people, my first love is history. And I've always been interested in helping to decolonize history, because the only way you'll be able to learn the true history if you learn all of the history and how it's affected each party throughout the events. So one thing I will say that we need to start at really is in elementary school with young kids, and not just Black kids, not just brown kids, but all children need to know the true history, not only of the state, but of this country. They need to know, how our presidents were. They need to know how they were in every facet, because, you have kids walking around saying, oh, George Washington chopped down a cherry tree, whatever. I think that was George Washington. But, like he also, killed natives, he also owned slaves. I mean, that's stuff we need to know. They, heroes, there was one quote I saw on Facebook. I can't remember who said it, but the quote was, your heroes will always disappoint you. And that's a fact, because they're not perfect. They never will be, but you need to know how they were in every facet of their life. And I feel like just creating, one of my goals is, and I'll announce it here so you should feel special. Like one of my goals ultimately is to have a People's History Museum in Oklahoma City, because we need to know every inch of this history. Like, we need to have land recognitions, which I was thinking about doing one on this call, but I was like, it's kind of a Zoom call. We're kind of in different places, so it wouldn't really be like one space. But here in Oklahoma, we sit on Osage and Wichita land. And right now, here in Oklahoma City, we're in Osage territory, and we need to know that. Like, this wasn't unassigned lands. When the land run happened, it wasn't just, a blanket of prairie. Like, there were people here. They were pushed out. And the Osage currently sit in north central Oklahoma. So that's one thing we need to know. We need to know all of this. And I feel like that'll be a really good starting point. That's going to be my ultimate goal. I hope, hint, hint, that the Ralph Ellison Foundation can help me in this feat. So, and I know that you all will be supportive of this. But yeah, we definitely need to encourage the school systems to start teaching every part of our history, including Black Wall Street, what happened to Black Wall Street, what happened to our Native people, what happened to, the Black towns that used to exist, how there used to be over 50 at the height of 1930, and now there are only 13 in existence. We need to know about all of it. So those are my future goals, and I look forward to working with everybody, especially the Ralph Ellison Foundation. Shout out to Mike Warrick Owens, who is the director, who will help. So yes, I definitely think that that's where we need to start. So.
I appreciate that shout out for sure, and I appreciate. I'm going to have some final words, and then I'm going to ask Shantae to say final words, and then our fearless leader, Reverend Fleck, to say some final words. All of you are amazing. I want to thank you and salute you for sharing your voice, for teaching us, speaking to us in a very honest way that I think that anyone that has a heart can hear it and feel it. And I just want to encourage you to continue to do the work. You are so valuable. Never underestimate your value in what you are doing. You are making a difference. And we just saw the Honorable John Lewis move on to the next phase. And one of his greatest, I think, gifts that he received was people like you, that he knew that his work was not done in vain. So please remember that as you come up to all of your challenges and your hard times, that you're so valuable and needed in this work. And Shantae, if you wanted to share some closing parting words.
Yes. So this was a powerful conversation. It was much needed that we got young people together tonight to discuss issues that they've had in their young lives and to give experience and resolution of how we can overcome. Speaking of John Lewis, where he said that we need to get in trouble, good trouble, the protests that we've been experiencing in America, the unsettling that we've had in America because of the unjust deaths of Black and Brown lives has been disheartening, has been difficult for all Americans to some extent. But as a nation and as a community, we do have, if we unite together, we do have the capability to move forward and to heal and to make life better for everybody, especially for Black and brown people. So on behalf of New Leaders Council Oklahoma chapter, I would just like to thank all the panelists, especially Jakia and Seisha, for gracefully representing NLCOK. And I wish everyone a good night.
Well, I mean, God, ugh. I'm resisting the urge to like go off on like a spiel. So I'm resisting that urge. I want to just reinforce what Shantae just said and Michael, and just affirm each and every one of you as the leaders that you are right now. Even as young people, I know that the world looks at young leaders in a different way, but you all are doing it. And I want to thank you and encourage you to keep doing that. My personal goal for OCC is to really get this conversation out there, normalized, and especially to engage white people in this whole experience. So as a white person, I want to say thank you for sharing from this incredible core of emotion that you all have shared from. I can't thank you enough, and I know that can't be easy. And I know that I will be reflecting on what it means to have to walk every step in your daily life in fear. To have to attend events and be hyper vigilant in every capacity to where you can't be present in the moment because you have to protect yourself. You know, those are just a few things that are sitting with me right now of just how real this is, how important this is to change, and to be a part of that work. Thank you. I'm just so grateful for each of you. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.